ladies and Germans, how you all doing? This is Con Org.
Drangu, hello, hello, hello.
And folks, we're going to give you a nice little map over here on Cell. Rang, what are we seeing today?
On left hand side in the blue, we have Mr. B playing 14th Infantry with a balanced income. Right hand side in red, we have Matoosh playing 3rd Canadian, also with a balanced income.
So here's the question. We saw 14th over here on Tuesday. We know the flaws. We know what they can do better. How does that match up against the 3rd?
I don't think I'm gonna have a good time on this map, frankly, just because it's a CQC map. And the 3rd Canadians, I mean, outshone now by 2nd New Zealand, are still a pretty good CQC division. I think using those Panther II Lukes effectively and the really good CQC infantry you have with like the Stoss Troop and Big League Grenadiers is going to be pretty important against the Canucks.
So I guess the thing that we always kind of have to talk about here is that these defensive groups, heck, I mean, unlike on Tuesday, we're not going to see the same kind of just plethora of just infantry-based AT. I mean, that's just not how the Western Allies run. How does that change the way that the 14th has to mass their vehicles?
It's actually a pretty good point, because yeah, the Canadians don't get a whole lot of infantry AT, and when they do, it's the bloody Piat of all things. So this could be a pretty good map to use those Panther II Lukes, get them in close, use those autocannons. I mean, yes, it's Stuarts, but at close range, that Lukes can really screw up a Stuart.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't help the fact that there's still a P-Shreks that can still be very, very deadly. We have Fusilier DPs. I mean, there's a lot of things to concern yourself with here if you are the 3rd Canadian. So, not for nothing, defensive groups are very good early on, but I kind of feel like they have to depend more heavily on those, late phase A Shermans, and heck, really trying to lean into the Shermans in phase B that we're going to be seeing here.
Yeah, it's going to be about using those Shermans quite effectively because, well, they have the stabilizers, and this is a good map to use said stabilizers. But so far, I mean, the central hill push is pretty back and forth. We got the Begleet Pioneers holding up against a horde of riflemen. The Panther II can't really do anything. And the Stuart trying to pop around, but the Panzerschreck will probably say hello, Rivrel. A Panzerschreck. It's classic German greeting.
Exactly. Smacking you with a fist, right?
A Panzer fist.
JU-88 over here in the meantime, I think he's going to make a bombing run and a oh, no, he's thinking something different. Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting call in bringing in a carpet bomber so early on, and I don't really see even Royal Friar 2 carpet bomb. I think maybe the big infantry push on the hill, but they've mostly gotten killed now, so...
And I think that's why he originally had them in here. Ooh, Stuart goes down super early. What that killed him? Was that the Stug? Yep. So Stuart goes down. Stug has claimed his first victim. And there is a Staghound kind of meandering forward.
Yeah. Panther II Lukes could potentially get him in an ambush here. Yeah, it does have brief line of sight.
Oh, it's delicious line of sight. And the Staghound, unfortunately, though, is going to see those Grenadiers first.
Oh, game.
Literally, like, 30 meters, and he would have been dead at that point.
Oh, Panzerschreck kills the Stuart, and the central hill is getting very blue very quickly.
And I was going back to the duel between the P2 and the Staghound. Turret stuck. And the P2... you don't really tend to appreciate how great their reload rate is on that one. Like, it is deliciously good. 103 rounds per minute. That is insane.
Yeah, autocannons in CQC fights are extremely bloody good in this game. Just because you get all the critical hit chances and suppression chances against the Stuarts and Staghounds, which honestly aren't that great. The main problem with them is that they only have 7 rounds a minute. With the small 37mm gun, where other light anti-tank guns, base tanks, or guns in general, like T-26s or Tyrans, usually have 12 to 15 rounds a minute. And I really don't know why Eugene has modeled the American 37mm to shoot so bloody slow, because I'm fairly certain you can shoot a 37mm gun much faster than that. Maybe it's a count of crew ergonomics, I don't know.
Maybe, but at the same time, it might also just be just shame. Like these guys are like, man, I don't want to be on one of these things.
Well, my brother's on a Sherman. This sucks.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It would probably be better if his brother is inside a Sherman, now that I think about it. Being on the Sherman makes you an easy target.
Touche. Touche. One thing I do like seeing with the Canadians, though, is that they always bring the rest of the British Empire with them. I mean, we have kangaroos starting to meander around the field, and these guys be heavily armed half-tracks. And I say heavily armed, I mean should be more heavily armored. Simple 12-7, battle taxi, not too shabby, but
yeah.
A nice little bit of extra firepower, which I think that the Canadians certainly need in kind of some of the earlier infantry fights.
You do. The kangaroos are a little bit expensive, but they're the standard price for an E50 cow transport. But definitely needed because you don't really have the firepower on that Canadian infantry there. Really just, yeah, to be spammed. And CQCO's field engineers maybe should get a drop on that Big Leap Pioneer.
The drop, yes. Will it be entirely everything else? No.
Kangaroos flanking around.
And they kill each other.
Rough road trade.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Honestly, I think it might even be a shade better for the complete Pioneers, but that's just me. 20 mil in the meantime. Gonna get wrecked over here by the Kangaroo. P-Shrek claims its second victim here, so yes, it is, I'm putting this in air quotes, just a transport, but that's still one less mod deuce you have to worry about.
Yeah. And the Kangaroos can't really do anything against that bloody Stug, so it's just going to be one easy kill after another, and then once the Kangaroos go down, all Mr. Bean needs to do is bring in a bit of infantry to re-secure the hill.
Staghounds are still getting a couple kills, though. Getting a P2 over here. Ooh, an early 105. I say early, but you know, any kind of legitimate heavy artillery in the first 10 minutes is rather surprising.
Yeah, it is. We haven't been seeing a whole lot of heavy artillery ultra often in our recent replays. It kind of ebbs and flows with our players like to use artillery. I frankly quite like seeing regular artillery being used a little bit more now. It definitely can give you quite a bit of the firepower edge, especially on a map like this where it's hard to get direct fire support onto target due to all the bloody trees. Having it come in indirectly is a pretty direct way of causing the enemy to die.
And that's kind of the important thing, isn't it? I mean, let's just go and let's be serious. We want to go and make things just kind of die overall. Like those defense groups, we want them to be, well, actually I had nothing pithy to say. Well, just we want them to be dead. We don't want defense. We want just dead. D-E-A-D.
With an extra E just to throw in there as well. And be very dead.
Fair enough. D-E-A-D-E? Or you want D-E-E-D-A-D?
I was thinking two E's next to each other. So it's like a Deead.
That's fair. That's fair. Deead.
Deead, there we go.
Deead. But in the meantime, Grenadiers, MG42s being brought on in. Stoffstupen against rifles. Yeah, so the rifles, it's kind of cute, but they shouldn't be able to stand up to this, and they don't.
No, they're going to die quite quickly, especially the rifles P-out with no SMG. They really don't have any worthwhile. Any of these Canadian infantry here in the Central Hill don't really have any worthwhile CQC firepower. Okay, maybe the Bren group's a little bit with the two Brens, but yeah.
Excuse me, defense groups.
Yep. Defense groups, yep. They're on the offense, which is a bit weird.
Yeah, which is why I think they have such an issue with it, is that they're meant to kind of just have guys run at them, so who knows. Is 12-12 though in the meantime? Matoosh has gone down slightly for some of his tickets here, and I'm seeing the first rounds from the 105 start to impact. He's going for the Staghound. I'm quite surprised by that. I would have rotated and actually been shelling the hillside here, because you can definitely tell that there's a lot of enemy infantry.
Yeah, definitely an interesting target choice, yeah. But Matoosh is going to get a foothold back into the hill here. The main thing is that he needs anti-tank on the hill. The problem is the Staghounds and the Shirts aren't going to be enough. He really needs to get a Sherman, and honestly I think if he can sneak a 6-pounder up onto that hill, he'd be doing himself wonders, yeah, because then he can start sniping the Stugs stealthily.
I see why he's not engaging with the artillery. And to me, I can kind of hear Flight of the Valkyries here. Exactly. It seems appropriate to reference Wagner right about now, considering who's flying these planes.
Mm-hmm.
And with that kind of in mind, yep, the Canadian push is now more of like a Canadian unpush.
Yeah, there's just all the infantry are pretty much dead. Yeah, just missed the beanies to bring in 1 or 2 decent scrotch, and yeah, like Pioneer SVTs for example, and he can mop that back up. This has been a pretty like uneventful A phase, all things considering. It's barely any point bleed on either side, and it's just a standard 12-12, so both sides being pretty defensive.
But I think that kind of defensive posturing, I think, is almost necessary. The 14th, yes, it does have weapons. We've seen those weapons occur. But the 14th is not the first guy I'm like, oh, yes, I want to make sure I bring the 14th to a gunfight. Because they aren't... They're not going to be the first guys that are going to rush out and be taking on the enemy with.
Yeah, they're not like a phase rust of it, and I think it's actually also quite funny to see 3rd Canadians being played more on a balanced race. Usually what I view to be a more like an A phase, B phase rush, but 14th is, definitely very slow and steady. Use overwhelming artillery and fire support to blow stuff up, and then you slowly move up with your slightly above average infantry.
Yep. And your assault guns over here in the meantime, still taking out the occasional tank. Like, for example, just now, another Sherman goes down. Sherman DDs not being able to shine as they might otherwise in a more open map.
No. And honestly, his main thing is Mr. B does have his Stugs in pretty good defensive positions, allowing tanks to get close to him, gets first shot, and it's going to be all important about getting those effective armor trades. Both sides have a pretty similar amount of armor available to them, so every kill will help.
Though I will argue, I kind of feel like if the longer the game goes on, more, I would say the armor probably goes actually over here to Mr. B. I know that's an unpopular idea, perhaps. But...
No, I agree.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The Fireflies are pretty decent in the map, like his first Tigers, but I mean, you also just have so many bloody Stugs. Up north, we're seeing a little bit of play here. Actually, I think Matoosh could make a pretty good push up here if he so desires. I just think he's very focused right now in the center, getting tunnel visioned. But on a map like Shell, it definitely rewards very, extreme posturing on the flank, so to speak.
That certainly is possible. Is it 105 engaging to the north? That's what I'm seeing. Yes, it is. 105 is looking way up to the north. And unfortunately for the Germans, a lot of this infantry is going to make it out of the beaten zone here. In fact, I don't think anything's really going to get hit. Yeah. But sprint through the smoke, try to pick something up here. The stovepipes laying down an awful lot of smoke. Maybe not to the brightest of ends, but certainly brighter for them up top than it is for these rifle squads down the southern hill.
Oh, the rifles make it right through the smoke, unloading very close quarters, but it's not very ideal for rifle Piach here. Especially against all this German infantry, they are going to go down very, very quickly. I liked the push idea, but the execution was a little bit lacking.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. So at least got something else forward with it.
Yeah, like field engineers or some of these Shermans, which are now being brought up, but he kind of lost his moment of opportunity here.
Yes, he has. It looks like Mr. B is starting to gain a moderate amount of momentum here. It isn't brilliant still, don't get me wrong. But there's still something.
We're seeing Matoosh actually push kind of like in the northern central position here, managing to stress out the Zis gun with the Sherman DD, and these rifle Piat backed up with actual Sherman flag support could actually capture his flag here and get a very good position on the hill. And this is really the more ideal way of playing Canadians. Your infantry are just here to get shot at. You really need the Shermans and airplanes and other fire support actually do the talking for you.
Ju-88, goodbye.
Bye-bye, Sherman.
And thus goes that position. Yes, they got the MP44. Yes, for half a second it's gonna stink. They might lose the flag in another 30 seconds or so. But I would argue tossing it, yeah, the stroke that's getting tossed in there is more than enough.
Yeah. And Matoosh actually getting that Northern Crossroads flag. I actually really like his post. He's making good headway here. I mean, he does have the Sherman DD and the Wolverine backing him up, but still quite a bit of German infantry in that forest. So with the Gassy of the Kangaroos backing him up, he should be able to mop them all up. And like I said, if you have fire support, you're good to go.
Sure. Down to the south, though, not to be out. He's still hurling some more infantry there in like a blocking position or two. It's not enough, I think, to stop him from losing the flag here, and I think we're going to see that change over here any second now. Southern Crossroad?
Oh, very close.
Wow.
Just blowing it.
Thank you. There we go.
There we go.
And more air power to the north. This is actually a very different air deck than what we saw on Tuesday as well, and I really kind of like it. I feel like the heavier bombers are almost necessary to help lead off the fact that your infantry doesn't have the AT. Like, there we go. Wolverine and the Sherman both taken out. That's a massive piece of the northern push, just completely gone.
Yeah, like it's still a great map for airplanes and artillery because it's hard to get those direct line of sights. Like trying to use a Tiger to blow up those tanks would be a little bit more risky compared to just, well, calling in a Ju-88 cluster bomb.
Absolutely accurate. Now, unfortunately for these rifles down the southern church, they are in full sight lines of, about a platoon's worth of assault guns, about 2 platoons worth of infantry. I mean, it is not particularly, well suited for their long-term survival here. And I feel like the southern flank is completely folded.
Yeah, and honestly, Mr. B will be in a very good defensive position. If he sets up those stugs in the light forest here, he has a lot of open ground between him and the enemy, and those stugs do like that open ground.
They certainly do. They certainly do. Now, checking back up to the north real quick, we do have a single Stug being brought on in. It's not going to be enough to turn the tide by himself, but I think adding in the Grenadiers as well as Pioneer SVTs, yep, and here's where the game starts to turn very negatively against Matoosh.
Yeah. Yeah, he just doesn't really have enough, like, oh, I'm trying to think of the word. Like, substantial firepower. His infantry is just not very good by itself. The tanks are pretty mediocre, and he's not really having any airplanes or artillery to really back him up either. And this is kind of the where you don't see 3rd Canadians much or often. They were pretty good like a year ago in the previous meta when Shermans were good, but Shermans aren't as great anymore, and that's really the only thing the 3rd Canadians had going for them. Any infantry spam, but there's better infantry spam divisions now.
Yes, indeed. And we're seeing right now, yep, rifles to the south go down, and while there is a Sherman being brought on in, gonna run afoul of both of these Stugs, I think, pretty quickly.
Yep. Stugs will be living the Stug life.
Oh no, they're engaging to the Sherman to the north first. Fascinating. So this first Stug's probably gonna go down. Yep.
1-2 hit, yeah, from the Shermans, but it's going to need more Shermans and more infantry to regain the southern position. But the main thing still is Mr. B holds the hill. Mr. B was to get a good anti-tank gun up here. He will be in a really good position.
He's not quite ready to do that just yet, and I understand why that is. I think that as strong as the position is on the hill, there's still a potential having just ridiculous bombardment from the air that could see some very valuable equipment getting killed. Like right now, 17 pounder to the south, Sherman to the south. The Stugs are, when they're out of position, things go very poorly, very, very quickly.
Oh. Ju-88 coming in. Never mind, not dropping anything. Anticlimactic. No kaboom.
Well, one to the south, a little bit different though. Going after the 17-pounder. Yep, he sacrificed enough, iron flesh at that altar.
I'm actually also quite surprised Matoosh hasn't even brought up any anti-air. He really needs the anti-air at this point. Okay, there we go. Spitfire being brought in, but not going to be enough.
Well, I'm fascinated by the Ju-88 being used as an anti-fighter role. This is kind of absurd.
Yeah,
it doesn't need it!
I guess it's a fighter bomber in some sense.
Yeah, but I think what happens is they got in front and the 20 mils of the lead Ju-88 took them out.
Yeah. Damn, that was pretty impressive. Because yeah, it has 3 20 mil nose guns. They're not even defensive. That's honestly not bad if you do manage to get behind something with Ju-88. That's actually a really good amount of firepower.
And, yeah, it's a crazy amount of firepower. It's just as slow as a brick. So
it's like using the mosquito, but not as cool.
Yes, absolutely. And with that one out of the way, of course, now we have the Ju-88 going after the Sherman. And these anti-tank bombers have been ridiculously good. I don't know if it's the same guy over here, the same pilot, but I'm pretty sure they've been responsible for at least 4, if not 5 or 6 kills.
And pretty important kills too. I mean, knocking out both tanks up north really just stopped that entire push here. And as you can see, with all the tanks going down, I mean, the 3rd Canadians don't really have anything useful left. Like I said, the infantry is just not that great by itself unless you have Trenti of them in a massive company slowly trudging along front line before they get killed by the inevitable artillery strike. Or airborne artillery.
And there's plenty more where that comes from. That's for darn sure. We haven't seen a napalm bomber, but at the same time, it hasn't needed a napalm bomber, so there's not a whole lot to kind of pine for on this particular map. And some of the valuable 6-pounders, excuse me, I'm sorry, about some of the valuable 6-pounders getting picked off over here, and it gets worse and worse as more anti-tank avenues get taken out. You were saying?
And up north, we got the half-tracks men and the mop up the rest of the Canadian infantry, and Mr. B getting a 2+ lead now.
Yeah, I can't help but feel that we're probably going to be headed for either a quick kill or a... Yep, there we go.
Yep. And GG, let's look at the KD. Holy crap, I was not I mean, in hindsight, yeah, it was pretty bad, but I wasn't expecting to be that bad. Wow.
Well, Pioneers doing very well by themselves. Stroke picking up 3 kills. When a P-Shrek goes and is able to go and pay himself off 3 or 4 times over, you already know it's going to be rough.
Yeah. It's quite a funny reversal from last cast with 14th Infantry not doing too great, and this one absolutely dominated the bloody battlefield.
Absolutely.
I think also just goes to show just how much 3rd Canadians have really fallen from grace. They just don't really have anything useful in the division anymore compared to others.
It really is truly unfortunate.
Yeah, and I'm very biased towards that fact as well, because I love seeing the Canadians, but right now you might as well just play second New Zealand. They do what the Canadians did, but better. Or 44th Guards, if you want a true, good infantry spam, cheap medium tank division.
Sure. The Ju-88s, kings of the space. Truly, kings of the battlefield today. We do have 1 stroke or 2 strokes over here that got themselves, a double handful of kills. But when push comes to shove, it was the air power that dominated.
Yeah, really good use of just those bombing runs, all things considering. And just, using the stugs in defensive position chose really the 1-2 strikes, which knocked out all the important Canadian units and secured Mr. B the overwhelming victory.
Exactly. So while we must have a moment of silence for the brave Canucks in the meantime, do you have any final thoughts about what Mr. B did or anything else overall, sir?
No, guess we'll see you next year, because that'll be our next
And
cast,
yeah, you're
2022.
absolutely right. Folks, I hope 2021's been everything you've been looking for. Hopefully 2022 is even better for us. But yeah, you're absolutely right, sir. Until next year, I'm Colin Oliver.
I'm Rangru, take it easy.